Imperial War Museum Duxford is a branch of the Imperial War Museum near Duxford in Cambridgeshire, England. Britain's largest aviation museum, Duxford houses the museum's large exhibits, including nearly 200 aircraft, military vehicles, artillery and minor naval vessels in 7 main exhibition buildings. The site also provides storage space for the museum's other collections of materials such as film, photographs, documents, books and artifacts. The site accommodates several British Army regimental museums, including those of the Parachute Regiment and the Royal Anglian Regiment. Based on the historic Duxford Aerodrome, the site was originally operated by the Royal Air Force during the First World War. During the Second World War, Duxford played a prominent role during the Battle of Britain and was later used by United States Army Air Forces fighter units in support of the daylight bombing of Germany. Duxford remained an active RAF airfield until 1961. After the Ministry of Defence declared the site surplus to requirements in 1969, the Imperial War Museum received permission to use part of the site for storage. The entirety of the site was transferred to the museum in February 1976. In keeping with the site's history, many of Duxford's original buildings, such as hangars used during the Battle of Britain, are still in use. Many of these buildings are of particular architectural or historic significance, and over 30 have listed building status. Duxford retained the best preserved technical fabric remaining from up to November 1918, and being remarkably well preserved. The site also features several purpose-built exhibition buildings, such as the Sterling Prize-winning American Air Museum, designed by Sir Norman Foster. The site remains an active airfield and is used by civilian flying companies, and hosts regular air shows. The site is operated in partnership with Cambridgeshire County Council and the Duxford Aviation Society, a charity formed in 1975 to preserve civil aircraft and promote appreciation of British civil aviation history. Museum history. The Imperial War Museum originated during the First World War in 1917 as the National War Museum Committee, formed by the British government to record the war effort and sacrifice of Britain and her empire. The museum opened in 1920, by which point it had been renamed the Imperial War Museum. With the outbreak of the Second World War, the museum's terms of reference were enlarged to include the conflict. The museum's terms of reference was broadened again in 1953 to include all modern conflicts in which British Commonwealth forces were engaged. The effect of these expansions of remit was to cause the museum's collections to expand enormously, to the point that many parts of the collection, especially those of aircraft, vehicles and artillery, could not be effectively stored or exhibited. Although the museum's South London home had been extended in 1966, by the end of the decade the museum was seeking additional space. RAF Duxford, a Royal Air Force fighter station, had been declared surplus to requirements by the Ministry of Defence in 1969, and the museum duly requested permission to use part of one of the airfield's hangars as temporary storage. Duxford featured 3 double-bay hangars of First World War vintage, which together provided over 9,000 square meters of space. Within 2 years, 10 of the museum's aircraft had been brought to Duxford, and were being restored by volunteers of the East Anglia Aviation Society, while the museum's own aircraft were not restored to flying condition. By cooperating with private groups, the museum was able to mount its first air show in 1973. Further air shows followed, with a display in June 1976 attracting an audience of 45,000 people. The runway was bought by Cambridgeshire County Council in 1977. The success of these shows provided a valuable source of revenue, and complemented the efforts of volunteers, so that the museum applied for the permanent transfer of the entire site to its use. Permission was received in February 1976 and Duxford became the first outstation of the Imperial War Museum. Initially open from March to October, Duxford received 167,000 visitors in the 1977 season, and 340,000 in 1978. 2 million visitors had been received by 1982 and Duxford welcomed its 10 millionth visitor in August 2005. Duxford Aerodrome. Duxford has been associated with British military aviation since 1917, when a site near the village of Duxford, in southern Cambridgeshire, was selected for a new Royal Flying Corps training aerodrome. From 1925 Duxford became a fighter airfield, a role it was to retain until the end of its operational life, and in August 1938 the Duxford-based No. 19 Squadron RAF became the first to operate the Supermarine Spitfire. With the outbreak of war in September 1939, Duxford was home to 3 RAF squadrons engaged on coastal patrol duties. From July 1940, Duxford saw considerable action during the Battle of Britain as a sector station of RAF Fight Command's No. 12 Group. In the middle years of the war, Duxford was home to specialist units, such as the tacticians and engineers of the Air Fighting Development Unit. In April 1942, the first Typhoon Wing was formed at Duxford. Notable among the pilots of the wing was Group Captain John Grandy, who would later rise to be Chief of the Air Staff and also served as Chairman of the Trustees of the Imperial War Museum from 1978 to 1989. In March 1943, the United States Army Air Force's 78th Fighter Group started to arrive at Duxford with the Republic P-47 Thunderbolts. The group re-equipped with North American P-51 Mustangs in December 1944, and until the end of the war in Europe the group remained at Duxford, carrying out bomber escort and fighter sweeps, ground strafing and ground attack missions. Duxford was officially returned to the RAF on 1 December 1945. It remained a fighter station, but by 1958 changing defense priorities saw the RAF's fighter force move to more northerly bases. Duxford's last operational flight was made in July 1961. No longer operational, the site gradually became increasingly derelict and overgrown. In 1968, the American film studio United Artists obtained permission to use the site for the filming of Battle of Britain. During the shoot of Single Bay hangar, which had been built during the First World War, was demolished to simulate an air raid. After the Ministry of Defense announced its intention to dispose of Duxford, plans were drawn up for various developments, including 2 young offenders institutes, but were not implemented. Duxford Aviation Society. Duxford is operated in partnership between the Imperial War Museum, Cambridgeshire County Council and the Duxford Aviation Society. The Society is a registered charity and states 2 objectives: to educate the public by collecting and exhibiting historic aircraft, military vehicles and boats, and to support the Imperial War Museum. The Society was formed in 1975 from a divergence of members of the East Anglian Aviation Society, which now operates the Basingbourn Tower Museum at the former RAF Basingbourn. Duxford Aviation Society preserves and maintains the civil aviation collection. Especially notable aircraft in the collection include a de Havilland Comet, which made the first eastbound jet-powered transatlantic passenger flight on 4 October 1958, and Concorde GAX-DN-101, a pre-production aircraft which achieved the highest speed of any Concorde, making a westwards transition transatlantic flight in 2 hours, 56 minutes, in support of the museum's goals. The DAS military vehicle wing provides one of the world's leading teams of military vehicle restoration engineers. The wing owns some of the vehicles located at Duxford, and provide restoration services for vehicles within the museum's collection. The team also operate vehicles for demonstrations during the year. The wing's works have been featured in the Discovery Channel's Tank Overhaul program, James May's 20th Century, and wide variety of magazines and other media. Other elements of the Society provide support a range of functions at the Duxford site, including canteen, aircraft conservation, learning and interpretative activities and administrative tasks. An affiliated group, the Duxford Radio Society, collects, preserves, exhibits, and demonstrates historic military electronic equipment. This is housed in buildings 177 and 178, close to the Gibraltar gun. Since January 1999, the Society have operated the Friends of Duxford membership scheme with the museum. As of 2008, the Duxford Aviation Society had almost 700 volunteer members. Air shows and flying. Duxford remains an active airfield and maintains 2 parallel runways, an unpaved 880 meters grass strip, and a concrete runway with a usable length of 1,199 meters, both oriented at 240 degrees. The runway was originally purchased from the Ministry of Defence by the Cambridgeshire County Council in 1977. In October 2008, an agreement was reached between the Council and the Imperial War Museum, under which the runways and 146 acres of surrounding grassland would be sold to the museum for approximately £1.6 million. Since 1973, Duxford has held regular air shows. Duxford is the home of several private aviation companies, such as Classic Wings, the Fighter Collection, the Old Flying Machine Company and the Aircraft Restoration Company. Between them, these companies provide pleasure flights, historic aircraft for film and television work, and aircraft restoration services. Perhaps the most notable privately owned and operated aircraft based at Duxford is B-17 Preservation Limited Sally B, the only airworthy B-17 flying fortress in Europe. Major air shows held regularly include the Duxford Air Show, the Flying Legends Show, and American Air Day, which is held in conjunction with units of the 3rd Air Force based at nearby Raff Lakenheath and Raff Mildenhall. The Duxford Air Show usually exhibits a wide range of aircraft, from vintage warbirds to contemporary jet aircraft, along with aerobatic flying by groups such as the Red Arrows, while the Flying Legends Show focuses on historic aircraft, especially those of the Second World War. In 2008, it was reported that these displays generate up to £1.8 million, while the loss of up to £100,000 due to adverse weather is also budgeted for. The policing bill, necessarily to manage the resulting road traffic, was reported as some £8,000. Recent major events have included the Battle of Britain's 70th anniversary air show, held on 4–5 September 2010. The show was attended by more than 40,000 people, and featured formation displays by 4 Hawker Hurricanes and 16 Spitfires. As an active civil airfield, operations at Duxford are regulated by the Civil Aviation Authority. In 2002, a privately operated Aero L-39 Albatross suffered a braking failure on landing, overran the runway and came to rest on the M11 motorway. A student pilot being killed after ejecting at ground level. An Air Accidents Investigation Branch inquiry recommended a review of their arrangements for aircraft taking off or landing towards the M11. As a result, the CAA in Duxford agreed to a reduction in the runway's 1,500 metres declared length from 1,350 metres to 1,200 metres, in order to provide a greater margin of error. As a licensed airfield, Duxford has its own fire service which operates as part of the airfield and AMP security department. The fire service was originally operated by voluntary crews who were part of Duxford Aviation Society, with the training officers coming from Stansted and other local airports. For the last few years it has been a mixed voluntary, full-time operation. Site layout. When originally planned in 1917, Duxford Aerodrome was to occupy a 238-acre site divided by what is now the A505 road, which runs northeast from Royston to Newmarket. The area north of the road would be occupied by accommodation and administrative buildings, with the airfield, hangars and technical buildings on the south side, still divided by the A505. The museum site is now bounded to the east by the M11 motorway, which meets the A505 adjacent to the museum site at Junction 10. The construction of the M11 in 1977 forced the shortening of the runway by 300 meters. In its role as a museum, the north side of the site is occupied by the Imperial War Museum's stored collections and is not generally open to the public, while the south side is occupied by various hangars and other historic buildings, purpose-built structures, and by two runways. The south side visitor entrance, which now houses a shop and visitor facilities, was previously the airfield's armory. The various buildings are arranged roughly parallel to the A505. Airspace is furthest east, with hangars 2, 3, 4 and 5 running westwards, followed by the American Air Museum and a Land Warfare Hall. The museum site is approximately 1,800 meters from one end to the other, and a visitor bus operates during opening hours. Some aircraft and other exhibits are displayed externally, such as the Comet tank and replica Hawker Hurricane, as gate guardians at the main entrance. Several commercial airliners belonging to the Duxford Aviation Society stand on the runway apron opposite the hangars. A Bloodhound surface-to-air missile stands on the site of the demolished hangar. A United States Air Force F-15 Eagle stands near the American Air Museum. A Royal Engineers Centurion Navy RE stands outside the Land Warfare Hall, and a Gibraltar gun, a 9.2-INCH artillery piece previously emplaced on the Rock of Gibraltar, is nearby. As a historic site, many of Duxford's buildings are of particular architectural or historic significance. In 2005, following a review of sites relating to British aviation history by English Heritage, some 255 buildings at 31 sites received listed building status. Duxford contains over 30 of these buildings, the largest number at any one site. Listed buildings include 3 hangars dating back to the First World War and the Operations Block, which received Grade 2 * status. This block, open to the public, houses the wartime operations room from which Duxford's aircraft were directed. Another historic building, the 1918 Watch Office, will be converted to accommodate a new exhibition entitled Historic Duxford. The exhibition, to open in late 2012, will depict the history of the site and the experiences of Duxford's personnel. Airspace. In 2000, Duxford announced plans for the redevelopment of Hangar 1, previously known as the Super Hangar, which was built in the 1980s. The plans would expand the building by 40%, providing more display and conservation space, improve internal conditions, and enable the museum's British and Commonwealth aircraft collection to be brought under cover. Planning permission was received later that year. The project cost £25 million and was supported by the Heritage Lottery Fund, the East of England Development Agency and BAE Systems, which contributed £6 million. The building, which provides 12,000 square metres of floor space, consists of an aircraft conservation area, a large exhibition hall, and a mezzanine providing views of the aircraft and interactive educational installations exploring aeronautical engineering and the principles of flight. Airspace officially opened to the public on 12 July 2008. Over 30 aircraft are on display, dating back to the First World War. Early aircraft include rare examples of an Echo DH-9 and a Royal Aircraft Factory RE.8. The former is one of only 6 surviving DH-9s and the only example on display in the UK, and the latter is the only complete and original RE.8 in existence. More recent notable aircraft include a Hawker Siddeley Harrier which served during the Falklands War with No. 1 Squadron RAF, and a Panavia Tornado, which flew the highest number of bomber sorties of any Tornado in the 1991 Gulf War. Also on display is a British Aircraft Corporation TSR-2 strike aircraft, one of only 2 survivors from the cancellation of the project in 1965. Recent additions include Eurofighter Typhoon DA-4, one of 7 Typhoon development aircraft, which was donated to the museum by the Ministry of Defence in 2008 and went on display in June 2009. Civil aircraft include the Duxford Aviation Society's Concorde and Comet described above. Airborne Assault Airspace also houses Airborne Assault, the museum of the British Army's Parachute Regiment and Airborne Forces, previously located at Browning Barracks near Aldershot. The museum opened at Duxford on 8 December 2008. The opening ceremony was led by Prince Charles, the Parachute Regiment's Colonel-in-Chief. The museum chronicles the history of British airborne forces from the Second World War to current operations in Afghanistan and costs £3 million. Hangar 2, flying aircraft. Hangar 2 is a double-type T2 hangar erected in the 1970s. It occupies the site of a T2 hangar erected in the 1950s. It accommodates the flyable aircraft of Duxford's private aviation companies, such as the Fighter Collection, and allows visitors to see aircraft undergoing maintenance or restoration. Hangar 3, Air and Sea. Hangar 3, an original Belfast truss hangar, houses Duxford's maritime exhibition. The collection includes notable vessels and naval aircraft. Boats on display include Coastal Motor Boat 4, built by Thornycroft in 1916. She saw action during the Baltic Campaign of 1918-19, and her commander Lieutenant Augustus Agar won the Victoria Cross for sinking the Russian cruiser Oleg on 17 June 1919. Other vessels include the Vosper motor torpedo boat MTB-71, acquired from the British Military Powerboat Trust in 2005, an example of an X-craft midget submarine, and a wartime Royal National Lifeboat Institution boat, the Jessie Lum, which was stationed at Bembridge on the Isle of Wight. A variety of naval aircraft are on display, including a de Havilland Sea Vixen, Sea Venom, and Sea Vampire, and a Westland Wasp helicopter which was embarked on the frigate HMS Apollo during the Falklands War. Hangar 4, Battle of Britain exhibition. Hangar 4 is one of Duxford's historic hangars, and now houses an exhibition exploring Duxford's history as an operational RAF airfield from the First World War to the Cold War. The early period is represented by a Bristol fighter, a type operated by Duxford's No. 2 Flying Training School from 1920. The latter period is represented by a Hawker Hunter which flew at Duxford with No. 65 Squadron RAF, a Gloucester Javelin, the type which made the last operational flight at Duxford in 1961, and by a Hungarian Miko Jangurovic MiG-21, a common Warsaw-Pact jet fighter. Britain's air defence during the Second World War is particularly emphasised, with exhibits representing the Battle of Britain, the Blitz and the V-1 flying bomb offensive from 1944. Notable aircraft include a Messerschmitt Bf 109E, which was flown during the Battle of Britain until forced down in Sussex due to engine failure. It is displayed as part of a tableau showing the crashed aircraft under guard. One unusual aircraft on display is the Sierra C-30 Autogyro, which was used by 74 Wing, based at Duxford, to test the calibration of coastal radar units. Hangar 5. Conservation in action. Hangar 5, the westernmost original hangar, houses Duxford's aircraft conservation workshops. Open to the public, the hangar allows visitors to see museum staff and volunteers at work on a variety of conservation tasks. Notable projects include a Mitsubishi A6M0 fighter acquired from an American owner in jungle recovery condition, and a Royal Aircraft Factory RE-8 now on display in airspace. Duxford is a partner with the British Aviation Preservation Council in the National Aviation Heritage Skills Initiative, which has been funded since 2005 by the Heritage Lottery Fund and aims to provide training to volunteers supporting aviation heritage projects.